often authors like to speak about their latest book, but in my case I have to say that it's a very fitting title. I'm going to be speaking about A Musica dos seres vivos, which would translate into English as the music of living beings, not only because it's my latest novel, but also because it is related to Tamil Nadu in a way. This is a novel which is part of a cycle that I'm currently writing, a cycle of different novels. Each of them has a character that has appeared in another novel, so they are all interrelated, but each of them is independent. And A Musica dos seres vivos is actually the story of MK, short for Manimekalai, who is a musician born in Tamil Nadu, but who migrated when she was a child to the UK. And there she finally moved from being an outcast to being a great music rock pop star. And she is having trouble also finding her identity in many different ways, her sexual identity, her cultural identity. And the story is the process of her coming to terms with herself and how music also helps her through it. And Galicia is present in the novel as well because her partner at some point is a Galician interpreter, a Galician translator, who is actually the main character in another novel, the previous novel. My connection to Tamil Nadu started outside of the literary world. It's actually a connection I've been developing for the past 18 years at least, through development work and work with feminist and women's organizations in Tamil Nadu. I can say that I have three lives in one. My life as an author, as we have shortly discussed, but also my life as translator, which is my actual job, and then the aspects related to activism. I am the founder of an NGO in Galicia who works together with, in this case, Tamil and Ethiopian and in other countries, women's associations and women's groups in the sense of development, but our conception is a little bit more political, and that's why we also bring culture into it. It is through that work that I came close to Tamil Nadu also culturally, and it has inspired me in many different ways. This character, I don't think it tries to reflect anyone in particular. I think that it tries to reflect issues related to displacement. And I was also very interested in being able to speak to a Galician readership about Tamil Nadu, which is a part of my life in such a deep way, that I really wanted to be present in the novel. And I wanted it also to be present in a way that was not linked to the preconceived notions that readers in the West can have about India. So for example, this character, her grandmother was in the independence movement, but in Tamil Nadu, so it's nothing to do with Gandhi, it has to do with the whole Periyarist movement. And I think those aspects are very obscured for Western readers. And this character helped me, for example, when in the passages about her childhood, it helped me bring out a different story for Galician readers. And on the other hand, it was also a way of conceptualizing a character who from the start would be condemned to ostracism as a migrant to the UK in the early 1980s, who's also confused about her identity. And in the end, it is through art, through music, that she finds a place, a very central place, but also a very problematic place in the West, in our society. For this character, the problematic place is, we could say it has different facets. On the one hand, she migrated, but it's not a migration due to poverty, it's a migration due to skilled labor, because her father is an engineer, so she's not, let's say she's not moving there because she's poor, but at the same time, she's suddenly uprooted from her village background in Tamil Nadu suddenly to cold Scotland, where everybody is white, and that is the first displacement, when she loses touch with her roots and with her language also. But then throughout her life, there's also a sense of displacement in terms of sexual orientation, because she's a lesbian and it's difficult to come to terms with that in the context of everything else. And another displacement has to do with fame and how people adjust their identity, and the struggle that in the end it doesn't matter how famous you are. Of course, she's a world star and surrounded by cameras and getting all sorts of media attention. It's very difficult to be in the spotlight when you yourself are not very clear about who you are, and how to present yourself to others. So most of the time it's through the music that she can communicate with others. And yeah, there are so many conflicts with her family or with her environment that are very difficult to manage generally, but they're even more difficult to manage if you are always on the spotlight and everybody's watching you and trying to see what you are doing. And I think that from that last perspective, the Galician character, who is she's a woman from the Galician mountains and a very eccentric person, actually provides a very interesting contrast to this character, because this Galician character is very sure about her roots and about her identity and who she is, and she doesn't give a damn about what people think about her. But at the same time, she's also a character that is not interested in fame, or she's just interested in the person. So I think that's when this character finds the final balance also, because she's with somebody who can embrace her complexity. There is a key word in feminism nowadays which is called intersectionality. It means that we cannot detach one thing from the other. Our identities are complex and we're always interacting. Depending on where we are, one thing will be more important than the other, but they're all part of us. So if you have been displaced from your culture, and in the case of this character, from her language too, because though her father comes from this periodist movement and is very adamant at the beginning that she's Tamilian, and even she's confused by that. Everybody has expectations about Indianness, you know, in the society that receives her. But at the same time, again, sexual identity is something that you cannot forget. Everything works together in a way. And I think that the interesting thing from a feminist perspective, at least for me, is to bring to literature characters that are usually not there. And in the case of Western literature, and in particularly Galician literature, which is of course quite different from English language or French language literature, these characters need to be there. And it has to do with the importance that seeing yourself reflected somewhere has, for example, for lesbians who never see themselves in literature, and then it seems that your experience doesn't actually exist in society. And also to create other possible identities for readers and for communities. So I think that for me the complexity and the intersectionality of the character is important, that you cannot separate each of these aspects. They all work together in a way and are part of her conflicts in general. And then the other part of creating characters that have not maybe been written before, at least for our particular literature. I think that the difference between Galician literature and literatures and languages such as English has to do with the fact that the language itself is not hegemonic. So when you're a non-hegemonic self, you may be more sensitive to the non-hegemonic being of others. And this means that, for example, we may find connections with literatures or with cultures that are not necessarily mainstream. Like I have been translating works of Tamil women's poets, and I've also translated Salma's The Hour Past Midnight into Galician. And you can see that the readers feel closer, even though the cultures are quite separate and of course the distances are huge. Our own experience of discrimination, of oppression, of having a language or a culture that is under threat can many times bring us closer to others. But I wouldn't say that this translates into particular topics or particular styles of writing. The Galician cultural scene, and particularly in literature, is very vibrant. And though the language is very much under threat, especially in recent years due to political circumstances, both at central level and at our own regional level, the cultural world is really producing a large variety of works and a very biodiverse scenario. Having said this, like in any other literature in the world, the voices of women, the voices of those who are not heterosexual, or in our case who are not white, or here who are not maybe Hindu or of a particular caste, still need to find their own space. So I think this is common for all literatures, but in our case we are particular in the way in which we maybe perceive ourselves and our relationships to others. We have a long tradition of interaction in Galician literature, developed mainly. It was there before, but it developed mainly from the beginning of the 20th century onwards. And it was always very curious about, first, the situation of other stateless nations in Europe, for example, the Irish, or the Scots, or the Breton. But I think that it looks with some curiosity, or I hope that it does look with some curiosity to other cultures. We were just today mentioning that, for example, a Galician work has been translated into Kurdish, and it has become a bestseller in Kurdistan. Because, you know, who would expect this? But the fact of the matter is that we're trying to look to ourselves in others, and that is mainly done through the situation of the languages, and that situation of oppression of the language makes us curious about what is happening here and there. And we have another interesting link, which is, maybe, I'm sure that the viewers may not be aware of this, that Galician and Portuguese were the same language until the 14th century. So there is a close connection to all the Portuguese-speaking countries as well, from Brazil to different African countries, and that is also a way in which we try to find our connections to others. So I think that the difference may be that hegemonic cultures, hegemonic languages such as English, and we see this in the rates and the numbers of translated works, think that what they write in their language, that's all there is. I always use this metaphor of the perspective that you have when you're looking, for example, in painting or in photography. If you are on the spot, you just see the spot. You need distance to see a work of art, to see a painting. This is precisely what hegemonic cultures and languages have. The problem that they have is that they are on a central space and they do not have the perspective to see that there's something surrounding them. And I think that that is our advantage, the advantage of those of us who do not use hegemonic languages, and that's how we're always looking for connections to others.